Hey everybody, this is Michelle.
And this is Julie.
Welcome to A Blonde, a Brunette, and a Mic podcast. What is our podcast all about, you ask?
Well, we're two 50-something women with life experience and, plenty to say.
Which is exactly what we're going to do right now. Alrighty, people, today's topic is a good one.
It is a good one. Not that we have personal experience with it or anything.
Oh, yeah. This one we did for a friend.
Yeah, we're actually speaking on behalf of so many people we know, not us. But we want to talk about. Well, let me ask you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Do you feel like have you run across situations with people you know where they're just so over the top with their kids that their kids just 86 them?
I don't know that I know anybody personally. I think there are those that definitely will distance themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's been certain points in my own life that I've done that.
Distance yourself?
Yes.
From your children?
From my parents.
Oh, from your parents, yeah.
From my parents. So
Yeah.
I suppose, let's say, the topic, everybody, is reasons why adult children cut ties with their parents.
Yeah.
So I didn't cut ties with my parents, but there were definitely times in my life. And as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about other scenarios. It's very interesting, actually. I didn't actually cut ties with them, but I think there were times in my life where I felt that my parents probably wouldn't approve of my lifestyle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, I was the one distancing myself. And to them, they might have felt like I was the cutting ties is so...
Well, I mean, there's different levels of severity,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a situation where, let's say you're spanked your kids or was giving them corporal punishment
Yeah.
or something, and didn't talk to you about it
Mm-hmm.
and was just saying, hey, they were misbehaving and that's what's going to happen when they're around me. It's like, that actually kind of happened to me when
you mentioned that in an episode.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew was not, he was little, maybe
Yeah.
8 or something. How bad could he have been? Right. But my dad didn't have a lot of patience and definitely was more discipline related, I think. So he just chose to discipline him. And I was like, oh, hail to the no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a whole other thing because he clearly had some opinions about our parenting, right? So I don't think I talked to him for over 2 years when that happened.
Yeah.
And I finally kind of talking to him because he was retiring and there was a party that my mom needed help planning. And
Yeah.
so I ended up planning the party and doing all of that. But I did it for my mom. I didn't do it for my dad.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would be a big one, I would think. And, there's the whole neglect and abuse, different types of abuse and things that you could run across. But I think a lot of the time, like in our society, and again, we're raising our people, our thoughts and ideas and experiences raising our kids is generationally different, obviously, than what you might see today. We were not, we were not super punitive with the things that we did. As a matter of fact, I would say we were very opposite. Like Brian was much more of a disciplinarian and I was kind of like the polar opposite of that, almost to kind of offset it a little bit or soften it up, I would say a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was more so with the oldest. And then, if you get to you're the youngest.
I'm the youngest.
By the time that you're kind of like, they're not they're not waiting up for you or anything else,
Yeah. Well, and I think when you think of that bond that parents have with their children or that, you envision parents having with children, it seems like it's this close relationship. It's an unbreakable bond, irreplaceable, all of those things. But it's interesting because as children do grow up into adulthood, I think that there's some simple yet many varied reasons why it might seem like ties are somewhat cut.
Yeah.
And I don't think in some cases it's a matter of, kids, not wanting, there's going to be all the cases, but I think sometimes it might be that they're just trying to spread their wings, move into adulthood and figure these things out
on their own
based on the things they learned throughout their life. So as parents, there comes a point where we have to trust what we've done.
Right.
And I think that's challenging at times.
Yeah.
Because of what we learn throughout our life and on our journey. And as we've gotten older, of course, hindsight is 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, now I'm speaking, from my own experience and how it at times is for me. So you look at your children and some of the decisions that they're making, and it can be hard to let that be, but it's not our place anymore.
Okay, so that's where I struggle with that a little bit. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I also think if they ask for our feedback,
absolutely,
or they want our opinion,
of course,
or we see that they're doing things that are really hurtful to other people, or they're detrimental to their personal growth or whatever. I mean, there's a real fine line about being kind of nosy person and getting in there and giving them your opinion when you're not asking for it and being judgmental. Right. And that's where I struggle a little bit, because I really feel good about my kids. They ask me for my feedback. They ask me what I think. They ask me, what I would do, kind of a thing. And I know they do that with their dad too. Mm-hmm. And it really does depend on the topic.
Yeah.
Because, maybe they're going to get a different answer, obviously, from either one of us. But
well, it's just like when they were little, Mom, can I spend the night? No, ask you,
Yeah.
And then they know who to ask because they know what answer they're going to get.
And that certainly does not change at all as you get older.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah. But as an adult myself, it's like, I feel like there are these, I don't want to say trauma bonds or things. Maybe I've got that word trauma in my head, but that happened to you as a kid, where now we are grown-ass women, and, there's things that come up that I'm just like, I didn't ask for your opinion. I didn't ask, like with my mom, I didn't ask for your opinion. I'm not interested in hearing what you have to say, because I know it's going to be something that I am not going to feel good about. And it's like, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's just everybody has their biases and the things that they believe in, have grown up with. And to give you kind of an example, not long ago, there was a circumstance where I had been seeing somebody, and I had, just had different friends and stuff like that were around, and my mom knew some of them, not all of them, but she made some reference to my trashy friends, and I'm like, what? Like, I was kind of like, we were driving in the car, and I'm kind of like, yeah, like Michelle. Yeah, Michelle's my trashy friend. Yeah, no, I really honestly was kind of taken aback, because I didn't really know what she meant, but she was being kind of evasive and passive aggressive a little bit about how she was saying that. And it came full circle to me that she was really talking not about my girlfriends. She was talking about whomever in her head she had this idea that I was seeing, or so. I don't even know. It was like probably even old. Some of it was maybe old information.
Like a guy?
Yeah, like a guy.
Oh, got it.
And she wouldn't approve for whatever reason. And I'm thinking to myself, I am like a grown woman. Why would she even care? Why? You know what I mean? It just seemed so odd to me.
Yeah.
So my response, which I felt was a really good, and I had put some thought into it, a boundary, where I had just said, you know what? You have different experiences. I have different experiences. We grew up differently. And I am just going to choose to love you the way that you are. And I'm going to leave it at that. My personal life, or the things that are happening in that part of my personal life, are my personal thoughts, feelings, experiences. And I'm just not going to share them because I don't really see the point. You're not getting joy out of what I'm telling you. There's a lot of judgment there. So it just, I think for everybody involved, it's just easier if that stuff stays off the table. And she was not super happy because I put a boundary up, and she goes, you shouldn't have boundaries with your family. And I was like, really? I kind of disagree. There's, but I expect that, like, for example, my oldest is getting married, and you have daughter-in-laws, so you've experienced this too. And there's a shift. Yeah. It's not that he is not involving me in things. He absolutely is. But there is a different woman in his life now that's not me.
Yeah.
And I don't obviously hold the same place as his girlfriend or his fiance now does, but we're pretty tight. So there's things that he and I have, had conversations about or what have you. But ultimately now the decisions that he's making, it's like he has his own little family that he has his 2 dogs and he has Amelia.
Yeah.
There's going to be a bigger family down the road probably. Yeah. But I guess my point is that that's now Amelia's role as his soon-to-be wife, to be the person that he is like bouncing a lot of those things off of that he maybe would have been bouncing off of me before.
Right.
And, like, for example, this whole move to Texas that they're doing, I mean, my initial response could be like, no, I don't want you to go. No, of course I don't want them to leave. I mean, truthfully, it's like, but I also know that that's going to be what's best for them. So of course I'm supportive. Of course I'm excited for them and everything. But if I wanted to be narrow about it, I could not be supportive. I could not be helpful. I could not be overjoyed, about the steps that they're taking. And I could be a big curmudgeon about it.
Yeah.
And what would that accomplish?
I think it's hard though sometimes for people. Good that you recognize that.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that's not easy to do. And I think that's why, some of these things, we're going to dive into them because I found some, like 20 reasons why adult children cut ties with parents. So not necessarily anything that we've personally experienced. Some of them, as I was reading them, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because I think there's times where you just don't realize some of the things that you do as a parent.
Right.
And I could say as a mom. And
oh no, you don't have a clue sometimes.
We don't. I know I don't mean to cross lines or boundaries and anything. If there's anything that I've ever done to make my children feel a certain kind of way to where they want to step back and not be close, I would never intentionally do something to cause a rift like that.
Okay, so now though you have grown children who have spouses who have opinions about things, and do you find that your role with your boys you've had to really think about that?
It's been a very careful thought process on many different levels.
Yeah.
For all of them, married or not. I have these beautiful women now in my life. It's a blessing. And because I know my sons the way that I do, I am able to empathize sometimes with some of the things that might be the dynamics that might be going on. At the same time, it's not my place to insert myself in a way that is not welcome or that shouldn't be. I'm not there to your point. They're married now. Their wives are the ones to work through things and do those. There were a lot of times when I was married, I did feel like a parent to my spouse.
Yeah.
And I just think that, though I people that know their children and are able to empathize on certain situations and on certain levels, to throw out opinions. And I learned that by experience. And
throwing out your opinions?
It is not, it does not help.
Well, especially if nobody asks for it.
Yeah. And it was not the right thing to do. And I learned that immediately, and I had to step back and reevaluate how I was handling some things.
I was talking with a really good friend of mine who has 4 children, all grown, kind of similar ages and stuff as ours. And 2 of them are married now. And when the oldest got married, there was a child that was already involved, and my friends were like grandparents to this child, and then there was another child that came into the picture. So now there's a sibling to that child. And the wife was really upset because she felt that my friend and her husband were not giving the same type of attention to the first one that's not their biological grandchild as they were to the second one. Now, my friends did not feel that that was happening at all. As a matter of fact, they were trying to create circumstances where they could spend time, with the kids. And the wife put the kibosh on everything for them. They haven't seen them. They haven't talked to them. They haven't been able to spend any time with them. And here's a great example of perhaps the son hasn't developed that experience or maturity level yet to be able to have a really good conversation with his wife to find out exactly what's going on. Or maybe he agrees. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's going along with everything. And there's just so much hurt that's there because...
Well, and at the same point, I don't mean to cut you off, but at the same point, I don't want to lose my thought. At the same point that we said earlier, this is now his wife.
Right.
And so
then do you stand in solidarity with your spouse, even if you don't agree? It's a private conversation that you have with your spouse.
Well, let's just talk about that, not in this particular case, but I think that for a married couple, you do stand in solidarity, whether you agree or disagree, because personally together you might agree to disagree.
Right.
And I'm just putting myself in that situation. So if my husband were to be feeling this way and didn't want the child and cut all ties, okay, I support you if that's how you feel. I'm not saying this would be easy.
No.
This is a total easy say, hard do. But I think that really, what alternative do you have?
Well, but that impacts your relationship with your family too.
But that's where I was going to say it doesn't mean that I can't spend time. So
then you start doing everything separately.
Not everything, but you might have to go out of your way.
I'm speaking from experience here.
You might have to go out of your way to come up with scenarios or situations so if my husband's off with their child, now our child, not biologically, but doing something, maybe with their family or something that you don't necessarily have to be involved in, then maybe that's when I go spend time with my family.
Yeah.
It would definitely have to be a creative situation that you would have to really maneuver.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad when you think about those types of scenarios taking place because there's all those little cracks in the family structure. And then you start thinking about, the get-togethers and the holidays. And this is where families start not really getting along, because there's different perspectives. But
can we just talk about that for a second?
Sure.
What does the holiday have to do with the family dynamic? What is controlling what now? Now the holiday is controlling how I'm feeling about my family, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. It happens all the time.
I'm just saying that because that's usually when people will get together. But honestly, it's like that's painful for a lot of people.
It is. And
they don't see a lot of the people in their family for, except for a couple times a year.
Yeah.
So they're really not close, I can recall my brother-in-law saying something about that with different family events. It's like, I don't really see these people any other time. I don't even have their email or their phone number or anything. Why would I go out of my way? And I guess I just kind of look at it differently. It's like, it's not like you have these close ties with people that are distant relatives, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have those connections with your family, even if it's not, a day-to-day interaction.
Yeah.
But, you could be at the family picnic and, Uncle so-and-so doesn't love the way that you discipline your child. And, here we go. So you're probably not going to be around Uncle so-and-so much because there's too much controversy, or who the hell is he to tell me his opinion on something that I didn't even ask?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, but yeah, to your point about the holidays, I was just using that as an example because that's when you see a lot of the time people getting together, or it's more obligatory. Whereas during just regular Sunday, Saturday afternoon kind of thing, people aren't just, hey, let's get together unless they're close, or unless they, have that desire to spend time together.
And at the same time with holidays, I don't know, I'm just thinking about, because I know quite a few people who have an opinion about holidays like that. And the things that it can negatively do like that. There's so much pressure. We're going down a rabbit hole right now and kind of getting off topic, but there's just so much pressure to commit and to your point, be obligated to do those things, whether you wanting to or not wanting to. And honestly, if somebody is not wanting to come, why would you make them?
Well, and it could be for a variety of reasons. I mean, we've talked to people and had different episodes on the podcast about like social anxiety and things where people are they dread the idea of being in a room with a lot of other people. It just drains their energy. So there could be a lot of different reasons. It maybe is nothing personal.
Yeah.
But there's a circumstance that I had read about on, I think it was Quora, where there was someone who had a new partner and that new partner wasn't kind to the kids. And so as you know, the kids have grown up, the new partner's not, the mom chose the new partner over the kid, basically is kind of what just in a nutshell. And I had this conversation at one point when I was a few years back in a relationship, and there was discussion about moving in together. And I was just like, I was not feeling it at all for the reason that my son didn't feel comfortable with this person at all. He just felt like there was something wrong, which he was right. There was something wrong. I think when I maybe wasn't present, there was these little weird passive aggressive things that were happening, kind of a thing. And my kid was saying, I don't feel comfortable, so not about moving. We were just saying, just generally speaking, didn't feel comfortable. So when the conversation came up, I was like, you know what? I really don't know. I don't think this is a good time for this. Our boys are teenagers, kind of a thing, and they're in the midst of a lot of change already, and mine doesn't feel comfortable. And the response I got, which was very telling, was, so let me get this straight. You're going to have your teenage son dictate and make a decision about our living situation. And my response was, yep. I'm not going to put him in a situation where he doesn't feel comfortable. So I chose my kid, and he was pissed. Yeah. Which in hindsight was the best decision, of course, I could have ever made. I did try to get a little bit more detail as to why my son was feeling uncomfortable. But bottom line was that his instincts were good, and I made a good decision. But that's what I'm saying. Some people, women, men, whatever, that get into these second or third relationships, they put those relationships in some cases maybe before what their children are feeling. And so there's a lot of resentment that can build up.
Well, yeah. And as they do get older, that's, can be one of the things that they're going to be like, well, yep, now she or he can go off and do that now, and I'm just going to do my own thing.
Right. And so you don't see those connections being strong, they're not, there's choices being made.
Yep.
And I have a really hard time with that, because you've got to balance those things out. You can't have a kid dictating your direction, right. But at the same time, it's like there's pretty clear black and white things that you don't want them to be exposed to, or you don't want them to feel uncomfortable about. You want them to feel supported. And it's like, isn't that kind of our job as parents when where our kids are under our supervision? Is they have to be our priority. They have to be the ones that we are thinking about first before we're making big decisions in our life, I would think. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Till they're 18. You kind of got a responsibility.
Or even longer, honestly, these days.
These days.
They can be on your insurance till you're 26.
26.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So that's one of the items that was in this list that we were talking about.
Let's kind of move through some of these.
Yeah.
We don't, because I kind of want to touch on all 20. We don't have to talk about all 20, but I just want to throw them out there, because I think though they might not be relevant for either one of our situations, I think that any one of these can be relevant for anybody that's listening.
Sure.
Bring up a thought for them to think. So one of them is not acknowledging that they're capable of more things.
Okay.
Now, once they become an adult, you
still treat them like a child.
Yeah. And I think as parents, we worry, we feel that anxiety for them. It's scary to see your children going out on their own as adults. And again, I'm probably going to say this more than the second time again, but trusting what we've done into play. And I learned that Rick told me that once. He was like,
which Rick?
Rick Rick, my Rick.
We've got a lot of Ricks in our world.
I know. Your construction Rick. There are a lot of Ricks in our life.
Your ex-husband
my
Rick.
ex-husband is Rick. So
okay. So
my baby doll now.
Your baby
Rick.
doll now.
Mm-hmm. So he's the one that one time I was, of course, having anxiety and worry about something, and he was just like, "Babe, there comes a point where you have to trust what you've done."
Right.
And he was so right. That hit me so hard, and it's so true. And that's, as far as knowing that they're capable of more things when they're an adult. And of course, you're going to see them fail. Mm-hmm. You're going to see them struggle.
That is hard. Yeah.
And it is hard, but that's how they learn.
Right.
And grow.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to let them do those things.
Okay.
Another one is holding on to grudges too much when it comes to your children.
Or them holding grudges.
Well, as far as them cutting ties with parents, though.
Right.
And we may hold grudges on some of the mistakes that they've made. And they might just be like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of hearing about it. Mm-hmm. I made a mistake. I was wrong. I screwed up. And parents sometimes can just keep bringing it up.
Well, they haven't gotten past it, clearly.
Obviously,
or it's like the one thing that they have that they kind of hold over their kid's head, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe they got in a couple car accidents and wrecked the cars. So now to eternity, they're going to be shitty drivers in their parents' mind, so they'll never get past that.
Yeah.
It's just like, I am known for being, quote, flighty and quote, generous. And those are not intended to be used in really positive ways. Yeah, the flighty and and I mean maybe I am. I can
But
feel.
do you see right now what you're saying? Some of those things.
Yeah.
I think
self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, no, some of those things though and how you feel tend to maybe have you create a bit of a distance. Mm-hmm. Because who wants to feel that way all the time or have it pointed out?
Yeah. You're so generous.
So anyways, so there could be another one. So
yeah.
Watch that. And then there's the divorce thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's adults out there that might think that if you went through a divorce that it didn't affect them as much. Maybe if they were a little older and were thinking it's okay, they're older, or you think you're handling it, the best way or whatever.
I think how parents come out of those very traumatic experiences, for the most part, I would say it's a traumatic experience that they're just a lot of the time thinking about themselves. I mean, we've been through it, so I can tell you, it's like you do not realize how much impacts them, even at any age.
Yeah.
And it's really how the delivery is on a lot of those things, and that will determine how they think about it, later. And
themselves and society.
Or even if they would ever want to get married themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because they may not, because the experience that they have or the relationships that they see around them are not positive or not healthy. And so they just choose not to, or they become emotionally unavailable themselves for people. It's so, that particular trauma or whatever that they witness is something that they carry on into other places. Now, do they hold grudges about it? No, I think sometimes the kids, adult or otherwise, they put their parents, they expect perfection, put their parents on some sort of a pedestal. When you're little, of course, you think your parents are all knowing. You think that they have the answers for everything. And we all know that's not true, right?
Right.
But as they get older, they realize that their parents are just human. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the forgiveness comes in for the things that had taken place when they were young, or, when bad things were happening, whatever those things were.
Yeah.
And so when you get older, it's like they might have a tendency to be more forgiving because they're doing the same thing maybe with their kids.
They start going through it.
Yeah.
They start going through the shit, man.
Yeah.
Like,
they're like, oh man, how did you guys even handle this? Right? Well, not very well sometimes.
Yeah.
You do the best you can, but it's even as a parent, it's like when you think about it, I'd never parented a kid, and then you'd never parented a baby, and then never parented a 4-year-old. I mean, you're learning every step of the way. Yeah.
Yep, every step of the way.
And all kinds of new stuff.
Yeah.
Along the way as well. So.
What's another one?
Taking sides.
Taking sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one because, when you have kids that are wanting to get your feedback, sometimes they're, like you were saying, they want to go where they think the answer is going to be what they want it to be. Mm-hmm. And when you have, if the kids are fighting there's different stages, obviously. My kids always said, well, you favor so-and-so, I kind of laugh about that because I'm like, well, my standard response is I favor whomever needs me most at that time. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's the same person for a while.
Yeah.
And other times not at all for some other people, And so, but definitely there's this whole favoritism thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it can feel that way, I think, for kids.
Did you feel that way when you were a kid?
I was just trying to think about that. There were 8 of us, and the oldest, when I was young, there was 15 years. So, we were all 8 around for a while.
Yeah. And
I don't know that I ever, because I was the baby, I think I kind of was the favorite. So I was the one that the other kids were probably feeling like, Shelly's your favorite.
You do everything for her.
Yeah, but, and I think babies always kind of get that rap.
Yeah.
They're spoiled. They're the baby. They get everything.
Yeah.
We never got that.
Yeah.
So, but, when it comes to multiple kids, and if there's, quarrels and fights going on, yeah, I can see where it might seem that you might be taking sides.
Well, the one who fights the dirtiest or fights the meanest is the one that I'm not taking sides with.
Yeah. Well, even as they're
you
adults,
just have to break it up. Yeah.
As they're adults too.
Oh, they can be mean.
As far as taking sides, you kind of, because there continues to be family dynamics.
Well,
even as
and
they
I think
get older.
As you get older too, I think that members of the family know where the weak spots and know where the vulnerable spots are, and so the ones that really want to get into it, they have the ability to do that. And I'm no angel by any means, but I absolutely 100% will not tolerate them being cruel to each other.
Yeah.
And I don't have that experience with my own siblings. My siblings are great. I've never had cruel experiences or cutting experiences or anything like that really at all. But there's definitely, and I'm saying this with a smile on my face, but it's like there's totally favoritism in my family. And but it's okay. I'm good. I'm kind of, in some respects, I'm good with it just because it's like, it's so much effort for my sister, but it's her personality.
Yeah.
She's just much more nurturing than I'm pretty nurturing, but not that nurturing.
Yeah.
I'm less patient, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So she could be the favorite. Works for me.
So another one of these is, and withdrawing support. If you see that they're doing something that you disagree with. I can't recall that I've done that. I always try to be there to support my kids, even through, because they're going to.
Well, there have been circumstances just in the last year where you're just like, what the fuck? I don't even know what to think. I don't even know how to feel about this. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. I need to process.
Well, and you continue to support them in a different way.
Yeah.
So
supporting them doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them.
Of course not.
No.
You will not always agree with your children.
And they will not always agree with you.
And they won't always agree with me, and they haven't always agreed with me. So it's just finding different ways to support through those times. Even if they're making decisions that you don't understand or that you don't agree with, it doesn't mean you're pulling the rug out from under their life and like, well, I'm not going to support you as a parent. That's fucked up.
It is. But I also think it's important to,
I definitely let them know.
Yeah. Share your thoughts.
Yes, absolutely.
About what you're, what you're seeing, what you're concerned about.
It's not an elephant in the room, and it's not swept under the rug. There's definitely conversations.
So maybe to the other siblings, it looks like you're cool with everything.
Yeah.
Because they don't necessarily have
It's not everybody's business to
right.
know.
It's not all in their conversation. So they just think, oh, mom's cool with everything, you know? And they're going, wow, that's really fucked up because depending on what it is.
Yeah, so many family dynamics.
I know.
That can come up.
Well, I mean, I have a friend who has a son that's dating a young lady who has a child. And there is a lot of concern, I guess you could say, about that. And I look at that and I'm kind of like, well, it could just be a phase, too. But I guess you have to, I mean, do I want that as a parent? Would I want that? No, I want my kid to have experiences that are different probably, but then I'm not the one making those choices.
Right.
And I don't know, that person might be a really good person for them. But I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about this with my friend and I'm kind of like, wow, that's a tough one because you don't want that person to feel like you don't support them,
right,
or ignore them or pretend like they don't exist. When I was, 20, whatever, I had dated a couple of different guys. One was half black. The other one was Mexican. And they were not well received in my house.
Yeah.
But now I understand, like my, one of my cousins had written this thesis on, there's a whole nother topic that we should have him on for, because it's pretty interesting, but on my mom's family and how she grew up and where they were and what the, I don't want to say caste system, but she's from South America, but the, hierarchy, of people that were, of different descents. And it's like this big light bulb went off in my head because, I mean, obviously there is time or circumstances taken place which has generated thought processes, and she's 90. Yeah. So, this is going back a long ways. But all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, this is where this comes from.
Yeah.
And it helped me understand her a lot more. Do I agree with her? No,
Right.
Of course not. I don't agree with how she does that. But at the same time, I'm trying to understand, that's how she learned. And so she's not a bad person or anything like that. She's just, in her mind, she's looking at it like, I can do better.
Yeah.
Which sounds terrible, but that's
Right.
what it was,
Right.
at the time.
Yeah.
So, and of course I push back because I don't like that. So there we go. There's like the little, so the differentiation between that parent-child relationship at that time, you can see how it would have progressed, over time. We're still close. We still, spend time together and do stuff together, but there's just components that were just so different.
Yeah.
And it's just easier sometimes to keep those things separate, just for lack of just anything else than saying you don't want to be fighting all the time or disagreeing all the time or feel bad all the time, So
some more of these and maybe try to think of the context around some of these, you as the adult child.
Yeah.
And in relation to your parents and how you feel. So, or as a parent, were you always, are your jokes and teasing? Are you doing, sometimes families have that dynamic where they're joking and teasing a lot. And maybe some of that really was hurtful at times and it went unnoticed and undiscussed. And so as they got old, it's just like another one of those things, or being dismissive and critical that can cause, an adult
or like
child.
a father treating his daughter differently than he treats the son, or he doesn't allow the daughter to do the same things that the son is doing because she's a girl.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be, I didn't have any girls, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know, like, I'm thinking about Mary. It's like she had brothers and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, they were awful to her. I mean, they were really, really cruel to her in a lot of ways. Yeah. And it was just all in fun.
Right.
Right. It's like the dad didn't really think two things about it.
Yeah. So
and I think a lot of it was happening maybe when he wasn't around, but there's no way in hell she was going to tattle on her brothers because they would have gotten their butts beat, Yeah. So, the dynamics sometimes can be really interesting. When we're thinking about our kids or any kids growing up and starting to become adults, they probably don't even realize that they're setting boundaries with you, but they might be setting boundaries with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's already boundaries. If you think about, there's things that they don't tell us.
Right,
there's things that we don't tell our parent. It's like, there's just some things you don't need to talk about with your parents. You talk about them with your girlfriend, or you talk about it with your boyfriend or whatever. But when those boundaries are ignored, which we've talked about a little bit, sometimes, hopefully, the child has been raised to have a voice, and they can actually speak respectfully and just say, "I'm not comfortable talking about these things. This is private," or whatever, and basically put that boundary right back up. And some parents will take a big offense to that.
Yeah,
but they never should have been in their kid's business anyway. Their kid's an adult.
As an adult, yeah.
Yeah, and is what I'm saying, as an adult. Now, when they're kids, it's like those boundaries are different.
Yeah.
They have to be, because you have responsibility, obviously, to them. But I think sometimes things that people in a family think are endearing are kind of cruel. They can be cruel. The things that they say or do, or, I'm thinking of like the nicknames that kids have given their siblings or whatever, and they're really hurtful. Like, you had a few, didn't you?
I was just Shelly Belly.
Shelly Belly?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary, they called her Buffy, because she was a gymnast and she had very strong legs, and they equated her to being fat. So they called her Buffy.
Oh.
Now, other people outside of their family might not have understood what that meant.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, that didn't happen. There was nothing like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, but she knew what they meant.
Right.
And so they would make that comment, and it would hurt. It would be really hurtful. But she would play it off, because the more that they knew that it bothered her, the more they would do it. Mm-hmm. It was that kind of a thing as a kid. But anyway, so I think, going back to the boundaries, I think it's really important that as kids, they start to learn that sort of thing. And I know for us as adults, I learned those sorts of things with circumstances that came up where I felt like I needed to put a boundary in place. Mm-hmm. Maybe I didn't even know that's what it was, what I was doing, Well,
and as far as boundaries go, just there have been boundaries. I have recognized when there have been some boundaries set for me. Mm-hmm. And it maybe in the moment I took offense to it, or maybe got a little defensive. Mm-hmm. But stepping back and understanding the reason, and really coming to recognize things, I respect that. Yeah, I do respect that. So
I like it when people they can be kind, but they're direct. I don't like talking in circle kind of shit. And it's like, if you've got something to say, just say it.
Or yeah.
It's like, if there's something that's bothering you, or something that I said that hurt you, I want to know. I don't need you to avoid me. I know. I don't need you to avoid me, because I'll go up to you and go, "What's going on? What's wrong?" I mean, then I'll be all over you, kind of trying to figure it out if it's important to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no way you, as the person who's breaking the boundary, can even learn from that if you don't know what's going on. Yeah. So there's kind of that to think about. And yeah, people do, as a general rule, what I'm finding, have a lot of difficulty with being direct, because they're worried about hurting people's feelings, or they're uncomfortable about speaking their mind, or whatever,
Triangulate.
Oh, yeah. So I was one of my friends, and
another one.
Yeah, it would be where the parent would go to the sibling, and then the sibling would come around to the parent. Now, I've never really had that.
You're utilizing your family like a chess game.
Yeah.
So to speak, and using one child to do something with another, because maybe you can't do that for that, and that would just get messy.
That gets messy. And where it seems like that kind of thing would be more prevalent in larger families.
Yeah,
maybe.
I would imagine.
Yeah, because obviously if you have less kids in your family, none of that stuff's probably happening. My brother does that to me all the time, actually, now, but he's mentally ill, so we give him a break. He goes to my mom, who goes to Angie, who goes to me, who goes, and I'm just kind of like, I get so pissed. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm done. And then I sound like I'm being ridiculous, but so I just shut up, because he can't help it. But
right. But yeah, so that can get messy.
Yeah, it gets very messy.
Try to avoid that. Recognize it if you can.
Yep.
And then there's taking liberties that you're not entitled to. So whatever that could be, but don't do it. Taking liberties, like infringing upon their life in certain scenarios, or
like just showing up at their house,
or decisions that I suppose
using the emergency key without their knowledge.
Showing up and inserting yourself in regard to
or inserting
things.
Yourself in disagreements,
making it seem like supporter opinions, or some where you're not necessarily have been invited.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. you don't allow them to be independent or to live their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that's more about the parent, certainly, than it is about the kid. Like the parent's having trouble letting go.
Mm-hmm.
And when they can't let go, then that's what ends up happening.
Yeah.
Because they've invested all of their energy in this human who's now an adult and is trying to do their own thing, and they don't know what to do with themselves. I really think that's what that is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't have that problem, but I know people that do,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because their lives or their world is kind of small, you know.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of outside interests, whatever. Their kids are their main 100% focus, which isn't a bad thing, but it is a bad thing when you don't have any ability to develop as yourself or have your own thoughts, opinions, hobbies, etc.
Well, yeah, that's a broader scope.
Yeah.
I kind of really in the last 6 months have had to let my youngest.
I know it's actually hilarious to watch.
I think we've gotten to a place where it's much better.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of factors involved there. He still does live in my home.
Yeah. He's still in school.
You know, he is an adult. He hasn't quite graduated college yet, but he's almost there. But
I was cracking up. It wasn't that long ago, maybe a couple months ago, where you were like, where were you? What time were you going to be home? Who are you with? And I'm like, Michelle.
Sometimes I just do it because I know it gets him going.
Oh, well, it's like you can't get a word out of the kid, no matter what.
And I think some of that is my older kids.
They always told you.
There was a lot of dynamics. No, I constantly have had to worry about all my children a lot.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of dynamics in our family. And so sometimes, unfortunately, my brain goes to worst case scenarios.
Yeah,
so
well,
I'm
that's
thinking,
pretty normal, isn't it? As
you know,
a parent,
like if he's taking the train home from Tukwila, I'm like, and I haven't heard from him, or I don't know what time he's going to be where, and then he's taking the bus and it's 10 o'clock at night. There's things that I worry
he is
about.
a grown ass man.
I know.
I wouldn't mess with him.
I worry about.
He's formidable.
So
you know,
he's.
Yeah. And
So,
maybe he got tired of taking the bus and took an Uber.
I own that.
Yeah.
So it's just, but I've definitely gotten better.
I've actually had a big chuckle on that one because I'm just like, Michelle, it's like, seriously, you're being a helicopter. Leave him alone. For God's sake. But then it's like, but if he spoke a little, I mean, if he actually had a conversation with you about some of these things, hey mom, I'm heading out with so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. I'll be back tomorrow, whatever.
He said goodnight to me last night.
Ooh.
So
yeah, I think he knows. It's like he kind of probably senses that it's like that time is coming for him to be more independent, and so he's trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Mama's not loving that he's hasn't said, Mom, I'm figuring it out. That's why I'm being so evasive with you.
Is that where there's another one here? You know, treating them like kids, even though they're adults. Yeah, and it's probably more for ourselves.
But I mean, I think they'll always be kids to us, just like, you know, our parents think about us as kids. I mean,
my mom says you'll always be my baby.
Yeah, it's like we're still children to them.
Yeah.
My mom always says, "Oh, you're so young," and I just look at her and go, "What?"
Yeah.
Well, compared to her, I am, I suppose.
Yeah, and I remember my mom years ago said, even when you're old, Shelley, you'll still be my baby.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, it's so true.
It is.
I think about that.
It is very true.
True. I will always be that for her. So anyways, comparing them to others, comparing our adult children to others, not a good thing to do.
I know. I've done that. I've done that before. I've done it before. I know I have, where it's kind of, and I've caught myself, you know, where it's been, you know, like the golden child, the we won't even say which one it is, but the golden child.
Like we don't know.
Like we don't know, because I don't think, I mean, he had it probably the hardest because he had probably the most discipline. The youngest, I think, was the one that had the most handed to him on a silver platter, really, but differently. But yeah, yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
We just won't get into that one.
Yeah.
But they think they definitely think that he's the favorite. So
not recognizing who they are now as adults, you know, refusing to sometimes they might refuse to meet up or speak with you. They just don't want to deal with it. They don't think you understand them or know who they are as an adult.
Right.
And it's probably hard for them to find, you know, playing field, if you will, that is comfortable. So they just
I think they end up
ignore it.
living, a lot of the time, the kids, they're living like a completely separate life and you don't even know it.
They've left your nest and are building their own.
Right. But I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that's going on with them that you're just not a part of.
Yeah,
You know, and
for sure.
And you have no clue what's happening.
And it's hard because for their whole lives, you
Yeah.
you were there and you were part of all that.
Yeah.
It is definitely, I can see where it's hard for parents sometimes to separate that, step back, let them be. And I'm speaking for myself right now, and just let them be and have what they have and do what they do and be who they are and support them from afar.
Okay. So on the flip side of that, there are parents I know that are our age that have children around our age who have like literally said, I'm done. My kids are grown. They've flown the nest. I'm out of here. And they're literally living their own lives to the point where the kids are like, what about us?
Yeah.
What, don't you want to hang out with us anymore?
There's a lot of speculation on that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, I think, conversation and differences of opinions on that. And yeah, there are those out there that do that. And that's what they want to do. And you're right. That's got to be hard on to the flip side for the kids. Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
For whatever reasons, they're doing that. And then there are those that say, you'll always be a parent to your children. So I think that's true. You'll always be a parent to your children, but it doesn't mean that you will always parent them.
Right. There's a difference.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
You can support and, be there for them emotionally. You can talk to them and give them advice if they want it, if it's being asked for, if they're listening. If it goes to deaf ears, there's no point. So a lot of different scenarios there.
I think what it really boils down to is that if you have any semblance of a relationship with your parent or with your child, depending upon what role you're playing, and there are rifts that are created because of some of these things we're talking about here, I think everybody's in pain. That everybody is really, whether they show it or not, they're struggling with it.
Sure.
And I know myself, I would have a really hard time with my kids distancing themselves from me because of one of these things.
Right.
I mean, I would try to fix it.
Communication.
Yeah.
Like I think, sadly, there's going to be those things that we might not know. If there is communication, as parents, we need to not get butthurt about things. We need to recognize that we're not always right. We need to genuinely apologize for
That's the big one,
that may have hurt them, that we didn't even realize were going on when they were younger.
Or, their living situation is maybe not great, or they're like terrible housekeepers or, whatever. And so you walk in and it's like, it's not the way you have your house. So you have to shut your mouth and just like not pay attention to that because what good is it going to do to say your kitchen's not clean?
Right.
It's like, do you ever wash your dishes? I mean, it's like, what good would it be to do that kind of thing?
Something like that.
Yeah. Obviously there's a reason. It's like either they are super overwhelmed or they're just, they don't care.
Yeah.
There's probably, or something in between.
Or a combination of both for whatever reasons.
So I think audience, when we're talking about this, it's like, if you're the kid or if you're the parent, it doesn't really matter. Or if you're not a parent yet. It's like, these are things to kind of think about because everything we're talking about here directly impacts the depth and the
legacy of your family.
Yeah. Well, and your relationship with the little people or, the grown people that nurtured you, you don't get those. There's not that many of those types of relationships around that you can really cherish. So if you're able to stay close and you're able to work through some of these things, what Michelle said earlier about communication, I think is really critical.
Yeah.
That's probably the healthiest way to approach it.
And again, Kate Schroeder, who is a phenomenal counselor and therapist, her website information is still on our Instagram page. So there's that too. I think, I was talking to my sister-in-law who her daughter is a therapist. I had no idea. And she is licensed here in Washington. She lives in Texas. She's licensed in Texas and Washington. But, I kind of made a joke about needing therapy, and she just said, we all do to a certain degree. And it's very true. I think everybody can benefit.
I think therapy is just getting outside of your head and having things you're trying to look at things more objectively.
And taking the step to acknowledge and be able to communicate those things to someone who has a biased opinion or, feedback to be able to
objective
to help you. So anyways, that's a whole lot to unpack, and obviously we're not going to do it in the little time that we sit here and we might chat together.
I think we should do another episode down the road where we maybe bring somebody in to talk about their experiences with their adult children or their experiences as a child with an adult, just because I mean, we have our own, and there's a lot of circumstances like I've shared about, just like conversations with friends and things that are on here. But I think it'd be great to hear, some other folks on it too, because we can go deeper on the topic.
Yeah.
But
in the meantime, if there's anything you liked about this, just download the episode, because you can always refer back to that. And of course, you can find us out on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, and we are still on TikTok, as long as they don't censor it or ban it. One of the two. We're there for now. So in the meantime, everybody,
have a wonderful, wonderful day. And we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.